Hi, and welcome to the NVCA Quarterly Update. I'm fortunate enough today to be joined by Jan Garfinkle, who is not only the board chair here at NVCA and my boss, but also the managing director and founder of Arboretum Ventures. So Jan, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bobby. Happy to be here.
What I'd love to do, last quarter we talked about emerging ecosystems, and because you're a life science investor, not biotech, but everything else, I would love to have you tell us a little bit about Arboretum Ventures and what you do, where you are.
Sure. So Arboretum Ventures is a healthcare venture fund located in beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan, actually named after the beautiful Arboretum that's there. And I founded the fund 17 years ago, really because at that point, healthcare costs were starting to climb. They were about 12% of GDP, and I
haven't stopped yet.
Haven't stopped yet. Unfortunately, now it's 18% of GDP. And I had this fundamental belief that through innovation, we should be able to drive cost out of the healthcare system, but still provide great clinical care. So that was our founding vision. It's remained, as you just mentioned, even more important in today's world than it even was 17 years ago. But that's our overall mission. We've now raised 5 funds. We just raised our 5th fund, which is $250 million. And we've invested in over 50 companies with the first 4 funds. We've created over 4,000 jobs. About a third of our investments are in Michigan. Half of them are in the Midwest, and then the remainder, on the coast. And we've created the 4,000 jobs throughout those different companies, and we've impacted more than 7 million patients with our companies.
That's amazing.
Pretty happy about how that's all
You
worked.
should be. That's a wonderful story. So you're impacting them obviously through the creation of companies that you're supporting and helping get started, and wonderful entrepreneurs. Tell us about 1 or 2 of those entrepreneurs and those companies and what they're doing. Help us understand kind of what this world looks like.
Sure. So the first one I'll mention is a company called Strata, which is actually located in Ann Arbor. And it was founded by a fantastic CEO named Dan Rhodes, who this was actually his second company. And he figured out that for cancer patients, they're having a really hard time getting onto the right drug fast enough. So he created Strata Oncology, which basically offers free genomic sequencing to any advanced cancer patient in the United States.
Wow.
And what we do is identify the tumor that's we identify the mutation that's causing that tumor. And then we've partnered with pharmaceutical companies to help get those patients onto the appropriate clinical trial to address that particular tumor mutation.
So you're helping the patient, you're helping find out if the cures that are out there today can work on that patient as quick as possible.
Right, and there's actually recent data that's showing that there's actually a much higher responder rate to these drugs if you can identify the mutation first and get them onto that drug that's targeting that mutation.
Wow.
That's the key. So this is how we can solve cancer, where cancer can become more of a chronic disease instead of a disease that could potentially be fatal. So it's very important, really exciting.
That's amazing. Another example?
Sure. Another company is actually out in the Bay Area called Envision, little n, Vision, started by a wonderful entrepreneur again. And, this is partly what we love to do is work with these incredible entrepreneurs and management teams that have these brilliant ideas. So this was created by an immigrant. Her name is Surbi Sarna. Actually, her mom and dad were immigrants from India, and she was first generation. And she is very open about her story, but when she was young, 13 years old, she actually had a cyst on her ovary and had to get worked up for ovarian cancer. And through that experience, she decided there must be a better way to figure out if a woman has ovarian cancer. So she, luckily it was just a cyst, it was not cancer.
Good.
And she ended up dedicating her life to figuring a better system out for detecting ovarian cancer. She developed a small little catheter that could basically detect ovarian cancer, which really often starts actually in the fallopian tubes, not in the ovaries. And so she developed this catheter, which is the first catheter that can actually take cells in the fallopian tubes and in the just outside the ovary, which without doing its surgery to the woman, so that you could tell a woman much more easily if she has any cells that are leaning towards cancer, and then be able to treat her more effectively and much earlier in the disease process. Mostly ovarian cancer is detected, when it's very late stage.
So earlier detection, better survival rates, making sure it's less invasive than what we have known before. First of all, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It helps, it certainly helps us here at NVCA understand more about the issues that we work on. The one I'm thinking about that we continue to work on with your help and others is making sure that we shorten the time for when the FDA approves something that says it's safe to the time that you actually can get reimbursed. Unlike biopharma, the medical devices and others can have this gap where you get the safety approval from the FDA, but then you have to prove that you're saving money or doing additional clinical trials. And it seems like that's an area where our public policy works can really help move the advancement forward and make sure that there is additional innovation happening.
Absolutely. And I mean, truthfully, right now, in the world of medical devices and diagnostics, reimbursement is our biggest hurdle. And the FDA has been phenomenal. They are just terrific to work with, from a small company standpoint. Where we still struggle is getting reimbursement approval. And there can often be, from time of getting FDA approval to getting reimbursement approval, 3 to 4 years where we are working with CMS to try and get it. And so, I think NVCA and in conjunction with some other advocacy groups are really trying to help shorten that. And if we could get that to happen, it would help so many patients, because there's this huge lag that happens during that time where the product is accessible to the patient, but nobody will pay for it. And can't use it.
And beyond those individual companies, it's if we can create an environment that's better for investment and better for the next generation of entrepreneurs coming online and getting something approved and shortening that time period, then we're going to have better innovation, better outcomes for everybody.
Absolutely. It's probably the most important thing NVCA could be working on for medical device and diagnostic investors.
Well, we're happy to be working on that alongside you, and thank you for helping us on that. In addition to that, can you talk a little bit about your year as board chair and, kind of what focus do you bring to this? What do you want to tell other NVCA members?
I think NVCA has just played a really critical role, really on two fronts, kind of simplifying it. One is on the advocacy side, as an example, working on reimbursement, but there's so many other things that are happening up on the Hill. We're here today in Washington. We're going to go talk to legislators later this afternoon. They come up with ideas for bills and don't really think about the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And it's just critical what this incredible staff does here in talking to the legislators about what the impact will be when this new bill goes through to the little startup company in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Right.
And we need that voice up on the Hill. We need the board members. We need all of NVCA members to be helping us communicate that to these legislators, because there can be negative impacts. There can be positive impacts, but often we have to continue to nurture this environment so that we can help create all of these jobs that we're trying to create, every year, and create these important new technologies. The other piece that I'm super excited about, and really for those of us not on the coast, is on the side of education and best practices. When I started Arboretum, the very first thing we did was join NVCA because of the CFO task force. We didn't know how to set up a back office, and so our CFO, Marshall, was very active with the CFO task force and learned how to set up the back office, and that was
It's
very
a great
important.
peer group to help each other and learn from each other and best practices. Thank you for joining us, and very excited to go up to the Hill later and make sure that we put some shoe leather on the ground up there and make a difference. Thank you all for joining us for this quarterly update, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.